is there a desire and a need for a collective, collaborative, unified family organization voice in Florida? And if so, why doesn't it exist yet? Or maybe a better question, what's the path to achieve one? And some of you sent in answers to some questions I sent out ahead of time, so we'll talk about those. But really, someone asked me earlier, do you have an agenda? Well, no, I don't. There's no agenda, except lunch is at 12:30, and we'll be done at 3 o'clock, and we'll take some breaks when we need to, okay? The agenda, for those of you who need an agenda, and I appreciate that, is we're just going to jump in and go. This is your workshop, okay? You're going to drive where this goes. My job, again, is to be the catalyst, to ask questions, to challenge you, to help you synthesize your ideas and come up with something, if that's what you desire, to try and do. So up on the screen, you'll see, actually, you know what? Let's take a quick minute. I'm going to pass the mic around. If you could just say your name and the organization you represent, just because I think networking, at least having an awareness of who's here, I'm going to ask you to go first.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Richards, and I'm with Ask Us Florida. We're in Brevard County.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tina Chichersky, and this is Stephen, and I'm with Family Care Council Suncoast West.
Thanks. Hi, Stephen. Here you go.
I'm Brenda Hayes, and I'm from Port St. Lucie.
Tim Turner, a board member with Family Cafe.
I'm Jeannie Forthuber, and this is my son Jonathan. I'm board member of Family Cafe, and I live in Longwood.
I'm Michelle Covington. I'm with the National Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health.
Millie Sweeney with Fredla.
Karen Clay, I serve on the board of FAST.
Hey, I'm Beth Pecora. I'm the Consumer and Family Affairs Specialist with the managing entity, Central Florida Behavioral Health Network, out of the Suncoast region.
Linda Gargan, National Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health.
Sylvia Catala.
Meg Ponte, Disability Support Network in Treasure Coast.
Diane Ciccarelli, Disability Support Network of the Treasure Coast.
Doris Tellado, Early Steps in North Central, Gainesville.
Lori Fahey, Family Cafe.
Luann Long, Family Cafe Board.
Kim Barger, Gulf Central Early Steps and Sarasota Program Manager.
I'm Leah Barger, Sarasota.
Thanks, Leah.
Paula Roberts, Disability Rights Florida, Protection and Advocacy for Florida.
Mary Smith, Family Care Council Florida Chairperson.
Cynthia Alvarez, Chipola Area Autism Resource Center in Marianna, Florida.
James Williams, author and presenter with autism.
Christine Rudd, Treasurer of FAST. And this is Jennifer Perry Breen. She's a board member of FAST.
Hi. I'm Anne Marie Shelton, and I'm from Marianna as well, Chipola Area Autism Resource Center.
Thank you, everyone. James, I want to catch up with you and see how things have been going for you since it's been a year, huh? All right, well, great. So, again, what we're going to do is kind of explore some things. Hi, Nikki. Do the lights. See, Nikki gets things done. So, you know, I think I have a feeling, of course, throughout the day you're going to see different sort of parts of me, sometimes really intense, sometimes maybe kind of a little bit silly. Hi, come on in and find a chair. We also have 2 tables on the ends that I wasn't using yet, but you're welcome to sit at these as well. So the thing that It's kind of interesting about our situation here in Florida is, this idea of the independent family-run organization, and when you have those all over the state, as we just heard, I mean, what great representation to have so many different organizations and voices from different parts doing different things. And the question is, if you come together and collaborate, is there a benefit to that? I am not here to make you collaborate. I'm here to help you explore that. I can make a great case for it. I can tell you all the benefits of it and hopefully help you get past any challenges if there are some. But I can't make you collaborate. So what we want to do is explore first whether or not you want to collaborate. I assume that since you're here today, can everyone hear me okay, by the way? We're good? Okay. So I assume that since you're here, you're at least wanting to know what the enemy is doing, right? So you kind of get the inside scoop and find out how to position yourselves so that nothing happens without your knowledge or participation. But I also hope, on the flip side of that you're here because you really think that, there are some things that maybe we can explore together as a group and learn how to get some additional benefits. So I'm going to break down this first statement. So this is what was on the the welcome letter and the invitation sheet, the one-page flyer. And we're going to break down this phrase, joint vision that would serve to unify and empower their collective voice. So far, family runs have not yet collaborated. And I say that generically. I do realize that there are regional collaborations and maybe even some statewide networking and so forth. So I'm not dismissing that. We're talking about a well-organized, well-orchestrated, single point of solidarity. That if I were the governor and I picked up the phone and called the board chair or executive director, if it had that kind of structure, that person could say, yes, Governor, I understand your question. Let me put out maybe an email to the listserv of our members of this statewide family-run consortium or association, and I'll get an answer for you in a couple days. Something like that could be a really cool benefit. But right now, it's pretty fractured if I understand things. So let's break that down. Family runs have not yet collaborated. To do what? To create a joint vision that would serve to unify and empower their collective voice. Another thing about my style, in case you don't remember, as you talk, I'll capture notes. Some of you are pretty familiar with that. And if you signed up, or even if you didn't sign up and you want to provide your email, we'll send these notes. Everything you're seeing up on the screen, you can receive in an email. So, and I do have some handouts for some of the other stuff that we'll be working with. All right, so let's talk about a joint vision. So a vision, as it says, is going to give you a destination to work towards. Okay, it's that point out in the future. It's what helps you shape your decisions today about what to do with this situation or that situation. How do you allocate your resources? Do you call this person or call that person? Do you take this person on your board or that person on your board? All of the decisions it takes to run a healthy organization, if they are tied to a future point in time, and that's guiding your decisions, well, then you will reach that point in time. What happens if you don't have that vision? Anybody have a response? What happens if you don't have a vision? What's that? Spend a lot of time exploring. Look at the first bullet here. If you don't know where you're going, any path will get you there. Have you heard that one? That's one of my favorite ones. And if you don't know where you're going, you are really along for the ride. And how many of you feel like you are putting out fires on a monthly basis, maybe even a minute-by-minute basis at times, right? Yeah. Well, it's not to say that a vision is going to make the fires go away, but over time, It will help you with your various situations and challenges, because just like a family that has some rules, okay? So I know some families have rules about cell phone use among their kids or teenagers. Well, without those rules, every situation that pops up, little Johnny is texting in bed at night, it's 2 a.m. Okay, don't do that anymore. Okay, well, the next situation, and the next situation, and the next situation, if you're responding to those flashpoints rather than saying, my vision for my children is that they will have a healthy relationship, if you want to call it that, with their cell phone. It's not going to be their life, they're not going to be addicted to it, there's all sorts of things. And if I know that's my goal, I'm now empowered to say, let me create some policies and then push that out and teach my children about it and then hold them accountable. It's the same principles that you apply in your organization. If I know what I want and where I want to get to, I set my policies, I make my decisions. So that's what vision is all about. Well, what about the word joint? Not something we're smoking here, right? So, rather, this means that we find our common denominators and build our vision together from there so that there is consensus. Because I can tell you one thing for sure. I know enough just by listening to the diversity of the responses from who you are, where you're from, what you do, that there's no one single perfect vision for everybody, okay? You're going to have to go much broader, higher level. You're going to have to find common denominators. And we all know, Lori pointed one out right away, family-run organizations. That is one of the key common denominators. So we want to make sure that we explore those common denominators, come up with a set of common purposes that will help us discern the mission of this effort. Again, assuming that we pursue the effort. We might get to lunch and say we're done because none of you want to collaborate. So if you got things to do this afternoon, you'll be angling for the no collaboration, no collaboration. But I have a feeling that we're going to get to a point when we leave today, you're going to be pretty excited about the possibilities. You will have been able to voice any concerns you might have. We will address those concerns and barriers. Hi there, are you going to help with the lights? Can we turn these big ones off and leave the little ones on? Perfect, thank you. Someone keep an eye on what he's doing so we can change it up here and there. All right, so any thoughts or questions about these? Yeah. Oh, he's doing it on his phone, okay. He's got a phone app, there we go. Tackle that man. Yeah, I was over there earlier and I pressed a button and everything went off. I'm like, ooh, wrong button. But yeah, we don't want to be in the dark. But so, any questions about this concept of vision, what we're looking for to try and do something jointly? Because we want to explore this. We want to test your consensus to see whether or not this is feasible. So, what is the consequence of not doing this? That's one of the sort of the manipulative ways that I will attempt to persuade you to pursue this. We'll talk about the consequence. What if you don't have this shared vision of family-run organizations? We have not seized the opportunity to benefit from a unified, empowered voice that can be more effective at contributing to policy information, service design, and funding allocation at the statewide level. These were the things, again, that were in the invitation to, well, that's nice. That's kind of intimate a little bit. Cool. It's a little early for that, but sorry, I am a family member myself, by the way, and my kids get it from me. So I've never personally gone in for any official diagnosis, but I've been in this industry for about 14 years now, and I've had many, many people tell me exactly what I have. It's kind of I'm doing a lottery, because someday I'll go in and divulge everything to some clinical professional who can give me some labels, and then I'll call the people who had that pegged, and they win $100. So feel free to write down what you think I have, and I'll keep track of that. So yeah, my daughter actually is, she has a mood disorder, anxiety, and right now she's in Australia. She just went from sophomore year of college and went to do a volunteer internship for a camel trekking company out in Australia for 2 months. She's going to lead tourists out into the desert on camels. All right. So that's part of her overcoming her anxiety. All right, so this is what you're missing out on and what you will continue to miss out on. Because guess what? What does every state agency have trouble with? Money and how to allocate it, right? And so if the pie is only so big, and there's so many of you to carve that pie up and give a piece to, well, there's just not enough to go around, right? So how do we make the pie bigger? If one of you goes in and says, we need a bigger pie because I need a bigger piece, and I know I can't get a bigger piece until there's more pie, because you're not going to take it from this one or this one. Well, thanks for your opinion, Mr. or Mrs. Individual Organization. What happens if, I can't even guess how many family-run organizations are in the state. It's probably at least 150. We had 55 register for today, and I'm guessing it's probably even more than that, way more. What if you had 200 family-run organizations all communicating the same message at the same time through its representative entity, if that's what it is, educating the state about the possibilities, standing up and saying, we need the pie to be bigger. And that's just one topic, is funding, of course. But policies and types of services and how to manage those things and authorities. And so anyway, that's what we want to try and get to. So that's what we're missing out on if we don't have that unified, empowered voice. So the goal today, again, this is straight off that piece of paper. We want to explore the common needs among the family runs, understand your current situation. We want to build consensus if it's there to be built. I'm not going to force you. I'll challenge you. I will tell you, just so there's no mistaken agenda here, I believe it's possible. I think it would be great for you, so I will do my best to try and convince you to pursue it. But I can't make you, nor can Lori, nor can any one of you make the others. The national people can't do it. By the way, it really is great to have the national group here, both the Federation and FREDLA, because I would venture a guess that they probably have some insights on this exact topic that they can share when we get to that point. And if anyone has any questions or comments at all, please just interject. It's pretty informal here. So we want to build that consensus for the concept of the family-run collaborative, and then hopefully create this approach to achieving it. All right, let's define family-run organizations. I have a handout. This is something that, way back in the day, I was working with some family-run organizations in Nebraska, and we came up with this model, this information, that kind of helps explain generically what they were trying to do. Now, you may not fit exactly into this description, and that's okay. Because what we're going to talk about is how this sort of model or template or can be a template for your organization. I like to use the learning approach of role modeling. And so what I'm doing here is I'm role modeling this one type of family organization, and we'll be able to apply these principles to your particular situation. Let me pull that up on the screen. Oh, wrong one. Okay, so on the first page, you have these definitions. And again, this may not exactly be you. But what's important is that you do have a definition. Okay? So the first point there, family organizations run by family members and so forth. You can kind of read through that. Number 2, helps establish a child and family focus. Number 3, providing leadership to enhance state capacity. Number 4, dedicated to promoting systems of care. Number 5, strive to be self-sufficient and empowered, that can participate in those systems of care. Number 6, they help identify needs, assist and propose a strategy to serve those needs, and so forth. Number 7, they work directly with families and children. They provide programs and services. Number 8, the board of directors are comprised of at least 51% family members. That's a SAMHSA definition. And where that definition comes from and why it's important is that if you ever wanted to apply for a SAMHSA grant that was earmarked for family-run organizations, your board would need to be at least 51% family-driven. If you're 100%, great. Anywhere in between 51 and 100, great. If you're 25%, that's your decision, that's fine. You just wouldn't be eligible for a SAMHSA grant that is designed for family-run organizations. Number 9 refers to the box below, kind of some of the supportive services that are typically available inside of a family organization. And so what we have, let's see. What we have, here's a handout for you. I'm going to play with that. Oops, it's something to maybe play with. So that box, there's support, there's general services, there's collaborative advocacy. Now that's an interesting phrase. Collaboration and advocating don't often go together, especially when you're talking about maybe trying to collaborate with a state agency, okay? And so what that phrase means, it's kind of a message internally to the family-run organization. Thanks. I thought maybe he would want to play with this because it's so big and obnoxious. I'm not going to wear it. The thing weighs me down. That's right. So, collaborative advocacy. Let's say I'm going in to meet with the state representative, Department of Mental Health, Department of Disabilities, substance abuse, whatever it may be. And we have an arrangement. And we've got a certain program that's going to happen a certain way. When the program happens, the state doesn't do what they said they were going to do. How many of you have been there before, right? Now, advocacy says, I'm going to step up on that stairway or stairs and I'm going to shout, the state failed us. The state stinks, right? Advocate, pitchforks, torches. All right, that is too often where our passion takes us when we're trying to advocate. What I encourage is this collaborative advocacy in the sense that, okay, you know what? That's water under the bridge. I'm going to make an appointment, and I'm going to go sit down with that person. And here's the card I play. I say, Mr. Ferrone, we had an agreement, and obviously that didn't work out right. I'd like to know why. I'd like for you to understand how that impacted us. And I also want you to know, I chose not to go stand out there and proclaim how you let me down. Now, how powerful is that when you tell someone that you covered for them, in a sense, right? You give yourself leverage. That's respect. That goes a long way towards helping you eventually get what you need, because they recognize, you know what? It's not just another group that's out with pitchforks and torches. This is a reasonable group who is not going to throw me under the bus every time I turn around. So I can start to build trust and rapport, and that's a good example of that collaborative advocacy. And you can apply that philosophy in all sorts of meetings, and there's just some examples there. So again, this is just kind of a generic definition of some principles common to family runs. If you look at the second page, if you're a visual learner, this now is kind of a picture of what I just talked about. I'm going to shrink the one up on the screen so we can see the whole thing, but you've got obviously the handout in front of you. Okay, so at the bottom are where your guiding principles are listed. And in these organizations that I was working with, they were talking about family empowerment, peer-to-peer champions, the collaborative advocacy philosophy, family-centered practice, cultural competency, all of things you're very familiar with, and you could probably add quite a few to these, right? And that's the underlying foundation that supports the primary means of delivery. So in these organizations, they were doing the face-to-face, the telephone, team meetings, etc. You can see all those. And those kind of broke into two types of services. On the one side, interpersonal services and activities that build skills through role modeling. And on the right side, supportive resources and services. And all of this together is designed to empower the family. I'm going to check. Are you guys comfortable? Warm? Cold? It's just right? Okay, now I'll take my jacket off. So I'm starting to burn up. I'm like, whew, it's getting warm in here. All right. If anyone's cold, here's a jacket, because I'm dying. All right, so all of this is designed to do family empowerment, to help that family successfully navigate whatever challenge and access the services they need, all the way up towards the primary and ultimate goal, self-sustainable family outside the system of services. And that's what this group wanted to try and achieve. So my question for you would be, how well does this line up with your efforts, your organization, your initiatives? And to that end, I have, you guessed it, a blank one. So I want you at your tables to think about your organization. You don't have to have everything filled out perfectly, but try and fill out as much of this as possible. What are your guiding principles on the bottom there? What are the services, different types of things? Oops. A couple more back there. Okay. We'll get questions in just a second here. If you think the goals are different, then you can change those up top. So I want each of you to think about your own organization and write some things down. And then we'll get to a point where we talk at your table and we want to explore what kinds of commonalities you have. What are some common denominators? Because remember, my goal is to first test to see if it's worth collaborating. All right, there was a question. Someone had a hand up? No question? Okay, so I'll walk around. Go ahead and look at this and try and write down your guiding principles for your organization. Fill in these boxes as best as you can. All right, so we left off. You were talking about your organizations and some things that you had in common. Before we share that, I want to ask a question. Why haven't we, when I say we, I mean you, obviously, why haven't you collaborated yet? Why don't you have a strong, unified voice among your FROs? Family-run organization, FRO, FRO. Yes, Jeremy. All right, there you go. It's
stress on like the answers, like timed things, like in like 10 minutes. You're gonna answer this question. I get a lot of anxiety, which powers my epilepsy seizure. And I don't like having seizures in front of people. I actually had one in math class last year in 9th grade. In my math class, which really kind of got me out of math since I don't like math. You didn't hear this from me.
I bet you outed your math teacher on tweet, right? Did you tweet about how bored you were in math? Well, so Jeremy's talking about just some of the anxiety that he feels, and certainly that's helping students in a school situation is one of the key things that family-run organizations do with IEPs and advocating and so forth. So appreciate you sharing that, Jeremy. I hope that my invitation for you to sing didn't create more anxiety, because you really sang well. So I was happy for you there. All right, so why haven't you collaborated yet? I have a hunch. Now this is interesting. When you look around at the number of people in this room and the number of name tags still out on the table, it's like 75 people. And I think we're only supposed to allow like 50 or 55. So those of you who don't have an official name tag and didn't register for this, you got lucky today that the other people didn't show up. But I have a question for you. How come I only received, 14 responses to the short survey that we'll be talking about? 55 registrants, 14 responses. Right. Okay. I'm sure there are a lot of good reasons. I do have a hunch, though. Yes. Okay, learn and then maybe do a survey. That's understandable. I still am going to stick to my hunch. My theory is that this topic of collaboration has been on the radar for a long time, has it not? I mean, it's been talked about, it's been attempted, for some reason it's not happening. So I was just kind of guessing here that that maybe there were a lot of people who wanted to just kind of come and see what other people were saying, but they themselves weren't going to go out on a limb with some stranger and divulge all of their secrets and things like that in a survey. But who knows? Whatever the reason is, we don't have a lot to work with, but that's why I wanted you to do that exercise here in the beginning, is to make sure that we do focus on what's in common. There is such a thing as fear of collaboration, because that's tied to this thought that maybe if I join something, I lose my identity, I give up something, I maybe lose funding, I lose my audience. Yes? Bingo. So a lot of different fears to collaborating. And that's understandable. My hope is that you'll kind of see a different way to look at it. And that's up on the screen there. We're not trying to create something to replace or harm your family-run organization. Instead, what we're trying to do is create something that will actually serve and empower and enhance all of those family runs that are part of it. It's kind of like that adage, what is it, the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. So I'm not sure I know what that means, but I like to say it. Sum of the parts greater than the whole. What does that mean for you? Right. Good example. So if you just have some fingers and skin, doesn't mean you have a hand. You put them together, you got a hand, and a hand can do so many things. So, I mean, think about the family runs. Again, if you had those, let's say 200 organizations, or even just 50, even just 25. If you have a large group of family-run organizations, they create a new energy and momentum that is greater than what they're able to do on their own. It's different than what they are doing on their own, and it is designed to complement and support what they are doing on their own. So just to let you know, in case it's in the back of your mind, like, what's John Ferrone's agenda? Is he going to try and come to Florida and make something happen? And, well, no. I don't have an agenda. The National Federation does not have an agenda. FREDLA does not have an agenda. What we're doing is trying to help you recognize that there's a great opportunity to do something that has some really wonderful benefits. Now, to help overcome that fear, we talked at your tables about what you have in common. So what I'd like to do is kind of do a little bit of a report out. You've already done this little bit of comparing your templates and so forth and identifying at least a handful of things that are common to your family runs. And what I'd like to do is put some of these up on the screen and see if we can come up with a list of at least 5 that are common to almost all, if not every single one of the organizations. So what we'll do is we'll start with this table over here on my far right, and then just give me one thing that you felt that you had in common at your table. Then we'll go to the next table, one thing, the next table, one thing, and so forth. We'll see how far we can get. All right, so what do you got? What's one thing that you have in common? Survey says? You put down that you're very different. So there's nothing in common? Okay, that's good. Passion for what? Passion for what? Passion for people, okay? All right. How about the next table? Is there something that you found in common?
I think we agree that we're all family members. We all have a family member with a disability. That's our desire to love the family.
Okay, good. You're all family members. Next table.
We're all frustrated.
All right, good. You're all frustrated. How about this table? Interested in collaboration. And this table?
Interested in education and training.
Education, training, and mentoring? Like that? Okay. How about this table? So you're all shared confusion? Okay, good.
Quality life.
Your table already had your turn. We'll come back all the way around. This table over here. What do you got? Empowering and advocating. Okay. And the table over here, yes. Okay, family support. Good. I'm sorry, are you trying to add a second one? No, just one. Right. See how I shut that down? Yeah. All right, back to over here. What was yours? What's your next one? Do you have an, oh wait, you guys had nothing in common. Really? That just surprises me. What about, okay, what kind of services do you do?
We're a brand new
Okay.
foundation.
Right.
Starting in March.
Okay.
We do one thing.
Yeah.
One large fundraiser. It's a community touch-a-truck event, and we raise money for Fragile X syndrome.
Great. They raise money for Fragile X syndrome. Okay, so, but do you have a governing board? Do you have bylaws?
Yes.
Do you guys have bylaws? Hey, they have bylaws in common. All right, I'm going to put bylaws up there. All right. Whew. I thought I was going to have to tell that table to just wait outside, but they're okay. All right. How about this group? Do you have another one? Yeah, another thing that you had in common?
We found out that we didn't know about vendors and the stuff that they offer, so we are uneducated about other agencies and what they have to offer. You know what I mean?
Kinda. So can you sum that up again? Okay, good. So unaware of what the services are available from other family runs. Do you guys have another one? I can hear you.
Okay. The ability of all the different organizations that work with disabilities to work together for our kids.
Okay, so they have an ability to work together for their kids. In this table. Legislative and policy messaging, you said? Okay, good. That's a common goal, common activity. This group? Sorry, networking. What was the first part? Visualize for the future. And then you said networking. This is like the problem table. You try. All right, I'll tell you what. You know what? We'll put visioning for the future. That's something you do, right? Okay. And we'll say networking. All right, you're done now. All right, this group. Do you have another one? 501c3 status. Okay, good. This group, do you have another one? So that's kind of similar to the unaware of what services. All right, I'll add that up there. Or that they even exist. Yeah, that's a big one. And okay, now you can share a second one. Jeremy or James? Who's sharing? Okay, what do you got?
Family support.
I have family support up there already.
Preparing people to advocate for each other.
Good. Preparing to advocate. And advocating, obviously. Okay, so look at this list. Passion, this is a pretty good list. If we spent a lot more time on this, we could probably come up with a list that was 5 times as long. When you read this list, everyone take a second, read through that list. Is there anything that really does not resonate with you, that does not feel like it fits? You may not be doing it, okay? We're not talking about do you have to do all this stuff, but is there anything that is really that far out of the ballpark that it doesn't fit? You're all very similar, right? And the challenge is, if this circle is the pie, this pie needs to be bigger than the room. But what you're forced into is to say we are so similar and so disconnected that we end up battling each other inside of a small pie. That's a fact, not just in Florida, but in every state across the country. Okay? There are some states where the culture is a little healthier in terms of trying to engage the family-run organizations, but it really is a challenge. And it's a meeting like this in which you come and demonstrate at least a curiosity and some interest and some hope to say, where do we go from here? What do we do with our commonalities? How do we take this list and turn it into a sleeping giant that we are waking up? Because that's what you are. Collectively, you are a giant that needs to be woken up. So, what do we do with this energy? By the way, here are some other ideas about things that you could have in common. What your values are, your programs and services, the people you serve, your mission statements, your needs, your challenges, the stakeholders you work with. And you made a pretty good list that reflected these things. So that was a good job. It's pretty evident that you're all really on the same team. So what can we do with this energy? Is there enough in common such that it will make sense to collaborate, to define a joint vision, and create a unified voice that would benefit everyone? Is there anyone, and maybe I want to ask this in a way that you don't feel ostracized if you raise your hand, but does anyone disagree with that? No. But seriously, where are we with consensus to say, do you recognize enough that it makes sense to try and pursue something collaboratively? Do we need more? Who strongly feels that we want to go in the direction of figuring out some form of collaborative effort? Raise your hand, please. Strongly feeling that, okay. And it's okay to vote even if you're not from Florida. So I think we have a pretty good sense for consensus that it's something you're interested to do. So what do we do with this now? Where do we go? And that is where it really starts to get fun. I want to tell you a short story. Actually, it's good to have a representative from FREDLA here. Back in, was it 3 or 4 years ago, the executive directors of the statewide family organizations around the country, about 18 of them, I think, came together and had a meeting to say, here's what we need. What we need is actually outside the scope of the National Federation. So we want to develop something that will actually cater specifically to our professional development as executive directors of family-run organizations. Now, I can tell you firsthand, because I was the one who had the joy and privilege of facilitating that. Herding cats is another way I like to think of it. We met in Denver for like 3 days, and I don't think we left the room for more than 2 hours. It was pretty grueling. We had 18 people, extremely passionate, a lot in common, but at the same time, some very different perspectives and agendas at the national level and within their state. And if I agree with what this person just said, what does that mean about what I'm doing in my state and so forth? So there was some things to navigate. And it was a very rewarding process. Now, we don't have time to do that today. What we're going to try and do is apply a similar type of model. So investigating the parallels, the things you have in common, talking about your needs, brainstorming. We're going to probably do a lot more group work here and then report outs. We want to end the day with some kind of roadmap, if you will, to help you pursue some type of collaborative effort. And the reason I mentioned the FREDLA is because it's a successful example of very similar but also unique perspectives that came together and formed something greater than themselves. Did FREDLA replace any of the state organizations? Of course not. Right, no. FREDLA is the Family Run Executive Director Leadership Association. That's why we call it FREDLA. Family Run, here, I'll type it up here. Here, actually, once.
I live in Tennessee, but our executive director lives in Maryland. And we have staff in Michigan, Wyoming, and California. And our whole goal, as John said, is to support and provide leadership opportunities, professional development for executive directors. We advocate for family-run organizations, and we are part of 2 national technical assistance centers. So we provide technical assistance, everything from organizational development to training to, when is a parent ready to be a parent peer support provider? We have all kinds of resources around that. And we're going to have a practice model for parent peer support. But through the Technical Assistance Network, we provide that we're the family hub for the system of care sites nationally. And we also are part of Healthy Transitions and Project Aware, that Technical Assistance Center. And then we also work with a lot of states around different pieces. Yes, it's fredla.org. I've got cards, so I'd be happy to share that with you. Yes, and we're also trying to put together a comprehensive list of family-run organizations nationally, which really hasn't been done, including federation chapters, statewide family networks, those that come up through System of Care grants. So I could really use your information. Thank you.
Sure. Yep, question. The outcome was a pile of notes and insights and discussion information that was then synthesized into kind of a roadmap and sort of business plan for FREDLA. So it had action items, the timeline, what needed to happen, and so forth. And if those of you who came to last year's sort of pre-con, we talked about family organization capacity building. So what was a model for doing that? And that was more of a workshop specifically about your family organization. But we also kind of morphed into a discussion because we had some state representatives there that it kind of began to talk about this exact topic. For those of you who are here and remember that, and I forget the state representative's, the department representative's name, Dr. Anyone remember? Bram, okay, well, that'll pop into my head later. Anyway, she had talked about the effort that had been made over the last couple years to try and do kind of a steering committee and some sort of effort to do what we've been talking about, but that had not really materialized to the level that you have wanted. So one of the things this process would need to account for is why. Why have there been roadblocks? Why have past efforts not achieved this level of collaboration? Because it's obvious you want it. You're here, you've got a lot in common, you're interested in this next level of solidarity among your family runs. What has kept you from achieving it? And so that might be a little bit of a tough conversation, but we need to identify what's in the way so we can get past it and empower you to accomplish that. So yes, I will, but not right this second, though. Yes. So, well, she'd asked what had come of the FREDLA 3-day meeting, and yeah, that was, I guess, a long answer to that. But yeah, we ended up with that roadmap that identified the obstacles and things like that, which is the same thing we want to do here. That's one of the things. So, any questions about any of that, the FREDLA stuff? The reason I mentioned FREDLA, it's a good example of what you can do. It's very feasible. This is right there for your taking to make it happen, okay? And it conceivably shouldn't require a whole lot of work and effort, especially with social media. So here's a simple example. What if there was maybe even just a Facebook page? That's free, or a blog site. That's free. And there are a handful of people who agree to volunteer to maintain an email list, and they serve as the people to kind of post stuff, resources, information. Just to kind of get a communication system up and going among all the family runs. Someone said, we don't even know they exist. Well, what if on that Facebook site there's a link or a document uploaded that has, it's dynamic and people can go out, or Google Share, you can go out and just add what you know out on that document and start to pick each other up, right? Because each of you knows a small piece of information. When we combine it, it's going to be pretty big. Yes?
You mentioned earlier about the collaboration. In my opinion, I've just recently seen something in Florida, and that's with the FAST organization and the Family Cafe. And that's really given me more hope than I've had before. And that's what we need is similar organizations with coming together, and that's what they've done. And that's one of the things that I've been asking is, what about a listserv? And this is technology, FAST is. And so that's, again, right up their alley. To put together a listserv so people that have the interest can get on and say, well, this is my issue, these are some of my solutions, what do you But when you hear that, that's one of my things I've been saying also. I have backgrounds in organization development and training, and our groups need more group development. They need conflict management. They need not to be afraid of it, and they need to know what triangulation is to how do you have a healthy group dynamic. Because we don't have a lot of that now in Florida, and that's even in the state level. But to begin here, that's what we need, because it's like, no, we can't keep on looking at each other and thinking passing out brochures is getting what we need. We have big issues that need to be addressed, and it's going to take big voices to get it done.
What we need, in my opinion, what we need, we got all these different disability organizations in Florida, and we need to find a way to link together under one common cause for our kids. Okay? So we have, instead of having a voice here and a voice here and a voice here, which don't get heard, let's band together, and we're not looking at your funding, we don't want your funding. Keep doing what you're doing, because what you're doing is great, with whatever organization you're working with. But, if we can come together under one roof to advocate for the needs of our kids, we have a louder voice, we have a bigger voice, we get more done for our kids unless, if we keep doing it individually, nothing's going to get done. We have to come together as a state and all these different organizations under one voice, so we can be heard in Tallahassee and get what we need for our kids.
I think what's important to say is over the last 23 years, there's some of us have been involved in the state part of trying to do that as individual organizations. We're doing the best we can to run the day-to-day operations of our organizations. What we have lacked is an overarching group, like you said, but someone who has the ability to convene us, to help us clean, to help us do provide the technical assistance to us, and that's something that we really lack. I know Lori's tried really hard to be able to do that for us, and there was funding for others to do that has never really occurred. So I know when I ran our local federation, I wouldn't have had time to convene everybody. But that's what I think, that's one of the things I've seen in the last 23 years that's never morphed to the surface.
That's why we found we can't
Say
do that. Can't. They did that work.
Okay.
It's something that the Family Cafe has been working on for years, but we can't get other organizations to join us.
Okay.
They're afraid of losing funding or whatever, but we can all collaborate under one roof.
Sure. I think
And then go as one voice instead of a bunch of little voices. Our voices can be louder.
that's definitely the goal. There's a comment back here. Yep.
You know what, the Family Cafe already has a list of all the agencies that have an arm off of the Family Cafe that addresses things like law, right, legislation.
I'm not going to be able to run around and give it to him.
It's already there. It's just, it like links each agency is over there. So I think, Lori, just more help funding under the Family Cafe. That's
Sure. So yeah, Family Cafe has some of that resource list available, but even that's not even complete. I'm pretty sure. So yes.
I was going to say other states have done this.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process. The biggest thing that we found in bringing together groups of family runs together to have something, you first have to establish shared values because that's the only way that you can get past the territoriality, even if you don't know that you're having that territoriality. But you have to say, yes, we all have a goal here, and our goal is to have a united voice. And this is how it's going to work. And then it's a lot of back and forth, and a lot of learning to trust each other, that people don't have other agendas. We've been working with South Carolina on this, and it has taken us 18 months. So it's not something that happens overnight, but when it does happen, it's very successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. You have to find those common values and build from there. Yes?
I think you touched the essential point. It's a matter of trust. So starting with getting together without judgment, without saying this organization is too extreme, that one I don't like to share with them, and start finding what we have in common and building trust. Without building trust, I don't see how that can happen. And I think that's probably one of the problems.
Okay.
You know, when I think of family-run organizations, the largest one that I can think of is the ARC. You know, they were families that wanted their children to attend school, so they developed their own schools. I mean, it's a national organization, and I don't see them present here. Now, to me, they've turned from a family-run organization to a business.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that, you know, that's my concern is, you know, once it becomes natural, then instead of actually assisting families on the local levels, now it becomes a.
Sure. And there could be different sort of growth stages for different organizations and purposes. Yes?
I would just say, I did this in North Carolina when I was there. We brought together a consortium of about 42 different organizations. And here's what we learned. We learned that some people wanted to collaborate and some people did not. And for those who did, we circled our arms around one another and we spoke with a common voice. But I don't think we need to become overwhelmed that someone might not. We need to gather those who have common visions and common interests. That would be a huge number of organizations, and that would be a very, very powerful voice. And hopefully those others will come along, because the ARC was one of the inspirers when we did this in North Carolina, and I do realize perhaps their vision has changed a bit. But it's very important to grab those folks who want to do this, rather than trying to reach those folks who maybe need some time to think about it.
And I also think that we need the family-run organizations to be a lobby, specifically to lobby for, because everybody has their own agenda, you know, and I think it's imperative that in order to have a cohesive voice, that there's someone out there advocating legislatively.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We need an organization that's going to do that lobbying. But instead of just your organization, it'll be lobbying for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
For sports and services, basically.
Right. For all people who just come here to say Florida. And I used to be, real quick, I used to be at the driver's center in Indiana. We had a rule back then, if you're 75, you took a drive test. AARP came in there and got rid of it. Because they're strong, they could walk in the room, people listen. Why don't we have something like that for people with disabilities? I would love to have a lobbyist that can go to the Capitol. I'm with Ken. We got a membership of 40,000 people here in the state of Florida. This is what we need done. You do that, they will listen to you.
Okay. Yes?
I think we have to be careful with the word lobbyist, because that's a word that very many of us
We know what that is.
Sure.
What I'm understanding you saying is there are other organizations, bigger organizations such as ARC, that have lobbyists. And so if they are sharing our voice, that we are a part of that, and I'm finding there are other groups that are not disability related, but will help us to get out our message. And they oftentimes do have the funding, the resources, the lobbyists, et cetera. So I think it's more than just our organizations, but our organization partnering with other organizations that can help us with the funding and the resources we don't have.
Okay. Well said. One more comment. Yes?
I just want to say, this is from my personal experience. We find that something is happening, we don't necessarily join. And even when we know these organizations are getting together, we need to take that effort in joining them, and then we have a movement. But if we just say, oh, leave it to someone else, we cannot move forward. So it has to be a commitment to join.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
How many here has heard of CAN, the Change Agent Network? It's something we started several years back, and the whole idea is to give people with disabilities here in the state of Florida a voice. One voice for all of our kids. You know, this thing about everyone got to do their own thing to protect their little ground here that they got, their little rights that they got. We're not trying to stop that. What we want to do is join forces.
Right. I think that point's pretty clear that that's.
More numbers, but more numbers behind us, and say this is what we need in the state of Florida. You know, and whether you might have one need, this group's got another need. Let's bring those needs together under one voice and go with it. But too many times organizations are afraid to collaborate together. We got to give both back. We got to give back from there.
Yeah, and I think that's well articulated. Thank you. I think we're at the point where we're ready to drill down and understand what those barriers are so that we can get to this goal you're talking about. So I handed out the answers that were submitted to me. Now, despite the fact that there are only 14, this is good stuff. And I just want to give you an overview of what this is. If you look at pages 1 and 2, that's the answer to question 1. What services and/or programs does your family-run organization provide? I did not remove any duplicates. But did everyone get a copy? Are we short a copy anywhere? I put them on the tables. Okay. When you look through this, some of these might be things that you do. If you didn't respond, you might say, well, ours are different. Well, then you can add them. That's fine. But there's so much in common. Even if they're you look at number 7, Wellness Recovery Action Plan, and I don't know, pick another one. Number 24, provide services and resources to kinship, pre-adoption, adopted and foster care children, etc. That's kind of in the same realm, right? Because you can use RAP in that particular scenario. So it's all connected. It's all related to each other. Number 2, on page, it's actually page 4 because this was part of a different document, but it's the 3rd page in. So look at the bottom at it says page 4. Can you describe the competition you face from other family-run organizations? Now, interestingly enough, there were only 7 answers. Self-advocates compete to present at varying events. I do not see any competition. Other local groups that are disability specific, the implication there is that there's competition against them. Here's one, no competition. And then a comment about other organizations receiving funding, implying that we're not receiving that funding, so we're at a disadvantage. A regional comment here about we're kind of the only one, and then another one, we don't compete. I'd venture to say that, there's either, obviously some people who don't think that there's competition, but I guarantee you, of course, there's competition. Because why? Because the pie's only this big. It's too small. So anytime that pie is not big enough, by definition, there's competition. And so it's interesting, that will be one of the things we have to figure out is how to get everyone to a point, those who want to collaborate, get them to a point where they say, I'm going to do what it takes to help grow the pie. Question number 3, is the united voice of the family-run organizations as strong as it could be? What are the reasons why or why not? I want to just point to number 3. No, I know certain organizations feel they are in competition with others. That's in direct competition or conflict with the answer to number 2. I mean, there's a lot going on among the multitude of organizations. And as you scan through these, I'm not going to read them out loud here to you, but number 3 is really powerful. There's a lot of solid reasons as to why this does not exist yet. And we'll come back to that and flesh it out a little bit more. Number 4, the next page. How would you describe or characterize the current situation regarding a unified family-run organization voice in Florida? One person at number 10 said, I'm unaware that one exists, meaning they read the question as, wow, there is one? That's great. I didn't know it existed. And which is proving the point of this lack of communication. And so, again, I mean, you look at some of these answers. Oh, you're okay. I just want to keep the door closed. The rowdy women's summit over there, I tell you what, someone needs to tell them to simmer down. Let's see. Question 5. What 3 things besides more funding would you change in Florida to make family-run organizations stronger and their voice united? You know what this list is? It's the beginning of a vision. This is the raw material. So when we talk about that example where I talked about Fredlin at 3 days, we didn't have time to kind of survey people ahead of time. We came up with these kinds of lists on the fly, on the go. Lori was at that meeting. Lori, do you remember how grueling that 3 days in Denver was for Fredla? So we have a head start, we have a jump start here. If at the end of today, there were a group of people who said, I volunteer to kind of be on some sort of planning committee to help shape this up and see where it can go, here's a lot of your raw material to start with. Take this information, you refine it, you add to it, you shape it up, and say, these are some of the things we want to be doing. And then number 6, who are the key partners? I mean, this could go on and on and on, because your key partners can be specific to your organization, specific to your geography. But as you look at this, I'm kind of curious to know if when you have a chance to read this more thoroughly, if you read this list and say, oh, I hadn't thought of that one. That would be a good partner for our organization. I guarantee you, if you read all 41 listed there will be at least one in that list where it jogs your brain and you say, I'm going to go make that phone call back when I get home to my location, because that's a good idea. That is one really simple example of the power of collaboration. When you share this kind of information, you say a simple question like, who are our stakeholders? Here's our list. I'll show you mine if you show me yours, and we'll compare our stakeholder list and educate each other about some different opportunities. Crystal. And question number 7, if there was a strong consortium, what would it do, and who would be in charge of it? And how would it be funded? There's no one answer on this page in these answers, but this is the start. And we're not limited to these, but this is the start of where. Are you going to be an association? Are you going to have dues? Are you going to be a nonprofit? Are you going to have 501c3 status? We have a board of directors. Who's on the board? Do you have an executive director? Are you going to have paid staff? Will it be volunteer? What kind of workload is there? How often do you meet? Do you meet? Is it all virtual? I mean, you start going through all these variables and say, what is this going to look like and be? And you've got some really good raw material to begin working with. So my goal is to get you through this information in a way that leaves us with an approach as to what to do with it. It's really easy to just throw your stuff and contribute it to the pot. Who, this is what it comes down to. This is the whole crux of your problem here in Florida. It's not that there's been no one, it's just that it hasn't been the right group with the right commitment to pick up that collection of information and run with it and do something with it and hold everybody else accountable to say, you can't just sit on the sideline. We need you. Right? So that's where we want to end today. My hope is that there would be at least 10, if not all of you, who would say, sign me up. I'll participate in the planning process. My time is limited. I will be engaged, but I'm not going to be one of the heavy sort of pullers of this load right now. But if you have some time and you like where this process goes, how it shapes up, today's the day to sign up for it and see if you can make something happen that has not yet happened. Okay? Any questions? Lori, it's 11:17 or 12:17. We need to be there 12:30, right? Okay. Well, we had, yeah, we'll end in about 5 minutes because we did have one of those earlier as well. So, all right. So, just to let you know, let's talk about what we're going to do after lunch. How long is lunch? Okay, so it's going to be a 40-minute lunch because we got a lot of work to do. We end at 3. We end at 3. So if we go to lunch from 12:30 till 1:15, and we start here at 1:15, so you've finished lunch, you've used the restroom if you need to, you're here at 1:15 to start, that gives us, 2 hours and 15 minutes with a break in there to crank stuff out, do some brainstorming, come up with an approach and a planning model that can take your energy today and begin to channel it where you need to go. Okay? Now, what does that look like? When we come back from lunch, we'll be asking you some questions at your tables. You'll be doing very, very diligent and focused work at your tables. We'll have report outs, I'll capture notes, and we'll just move this process along. And I'd venture to say that most likely what we'll do is have a high-level idea at the end, but I can take the notes from today and package them up and put them into a phased approach as well and get that back out to you so we don't have to spend that time today on that. I can do that after you guys generate a lot of stuff. All right? So let's go ahead and take a short restroom break, and then I guess lunch is right on the other side of this wall, correct? Any other announcements? No. Okay. Please take this along if you can and read it so it's familiar to you. That will be really helpful. Read this document over lunch. Share it with the Women's Summit. They'll be impressed. Okay, let's hear some of your ideas. I'm going to ask you to use the microphone so that you can hear each other speaking. Start with this table. Do you guys want to go first or not? Sure. Well, we'll start on that end and then come around. The question is, what could the mission or purpose of the family-run organization collaborative be? Why will it exist? Whom could it serve? How about this group? Are you guys ready to share some ideas? We got a lot of things to do.
I think one.
Here, you're going to take this. I'm going to go type. Hang on.
One of
All
the
right.
things that we talked about was just uniting the family-owned businesses, and that's not really the mission, I don't guess, but that's why we would exist.
This is brainstorming,
Okay.
so you don't have to come up with the exact mission. Just go ahead and share your ideas.
Right. So it would be a place where we could share knowledge and experience. Instead of having to become an expert at everything, we could pool our resources and seek assistance from those people that have already been there and done that, and have a good knowledge base of what we need to do so that we don't have to spend so much time researching the steps or the processes or the pieces that we need to complete, and have somebody to kind of go to mentor us through that process, and then in turn be able to do that for somebody else.
Okay, good, thanks. Can you hand the mic to the next table?
You're the next contestant.
A lot of what they said, basically, share information and pooling resources.
Okay, great, thanks.
We have something very vague, and it probably needs a lot of attention, but to support the collaboration for one voice within family-run organizations.
That's pretty much what we said, to provide a unified voice to advocate for family-run organizations.
Okay.
Oh, we're still writing. We had several thoughts. We thought this organization should be a collaboration oriented to work, like a work group, and having empathy, remembering how hard it is to start your own organization. And based on that, we also said an organization that exists to provide support, education, and advocacy skills to parent-run organizations. Not directly supporting the individuals, but supporting the organizations that are actually representing them. I know I talk very fast, I'm sorry.
So I'm sorry, could you say that second one again? I was busy finishing up the first one.
Providing an organization that exists to provide support, education, and advocacy skills to family-run organizations, and not focusing on the children or adults with disabilities, but focusing on the organizations that represent them.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I have to walk.
Let me see what we haven't already talked about. First thing, we want to be able to, at least with my son, it's always about moving forward, like even if it's a baby step. So we want to do something to help enrich and positively impact the lives of men, women, and children with disabilities. Along the lines with the unified voice, I put having us all together, I think, will give us an opportunity to reach out to a bigger audience, and everything else that's already up there. Well done.
Okay, thank you.
Ditto what they said.
Ditto. All right. And, okay. Thanks.
So we said to further the efforts to advocate for people with disabilities. And then obviously the people we would be trying to assist is people with disabilities.
Okay. And has anyone thought of anything additionally as we've kind of been making this list? All right, so to give you an example of what you would do with this, so assuming that there will be, again, a group of people interested to kind of run with this, they would get this question and this whole document, this question with these bullet points, and they might find right inside these bullet points the exact mission, They might get into further discussion that goes bigger, deeper, however you want to look at it, and come up with something that's not even right now in these bullet points. So don't look at this set of bullet points and say, oh, our mission is that's going to be our mission. This is kind of, like I said, that startup ideas, raw material that will help stimulate the further planning and discussion that will be done. So again, does anyone want to add anything that may not have been mentioned yet or that you thought of? All right, so let's wash, rinse, and repeat the process. What are some things that could be accomplished or could have changed if that mission or purpose is accomplished? In other words, if we do our mission, what could we achieve? What are you hoping for? What are the results of this initiative? So I want you to talk among your groups and come up with a list that we will report out again. Actually, it might be good to kind of combine. We've got 4 tables of 2. So what's that? Okay, remember, this is the question up on the screen. Do you need more time with this question? What are some things that could be accomplished or could have changed if the mission or purpose is accomplished? In other words, if we do our mission, what could we achieve? What will we change? What will our impact be? If this collaborative comes to fruition, so what? Why? What's the impact you're trying to make? You guys need more time to talk about that? No? Good? All right. So let's pass the mic. How about this group? You guys want to go first? Are you ready, or do you want to? Okay, you're good. You can actually go this time. Hang on just a sec. I do want to make one quick comment. So I was asked the question, so are these questions anywhere in the handout? And the answer is no, because I wrote these during lunch. And I wrote these based on what we were able to do this morning. Like I told you, I had no idea where this was going today, right? I mean, generally speaking, a direction, but who knew if you guys were going to be interested or not? If you were even going to come back after lunch to participate in a collaborative planning process. So a lot of this is by the seat of the pants, but don't worry, it's all a just a well-known process. In fact, I'll give you a quick example. It's going to be tough to see it first, but don't worry, I will zoom in. I'll use my pointer. All right, so this is one phase, this is a second phase, and that's a third phase. Now, what do those phases mean? This was when I was doing this exact same process with adult mental health consumer peer supporters in Mississippi. And this was the planning document that I worked with them to create. Phase 1 was all about defining the mission and vision and programs and services, defining the why and the what. Why are we even going to spend our time doing this? The inputs to that process were comments from a peer summit that I facilitated in 2014. Well, today's comments, what you're generating right now, are that bullet point. The comments from this family-run organization summit will be one of the key inputs to that planning phase, okay? So that we have steps in here. And what I would anticipate doing, like I said, I can take your notes, I can kind of package them up, I can tailor a planning process like this and send it out to you so you have some kind of guidance, okay? And then we get into the second phase, which is implementation planning. So it's now that we know what we want to be, let's talk about how we're going to do it. And once we have defined that, we get to the point where this group incorporated, they secured startup funding, they hired staff, they conduct marketing, and they basically begin to do what they've planned. So these are the 3 basic planning steps. And what I'm anticipating is that as we get through these questions, you will be able to generate a whole bunch of raw material comments that will be key input to this planning process. It does not mean it's the only chance to give input. It's a start today, okay? So I would anticipate that there would be, if you do this, some kind of planning group that's probably doing more outreach, maybe surveys, things like that, to touch the lives and the minds and hearts of people who could not be here today to find out what do they want to do, and so continuing to gather comments. So that's the big picture framework. Something like this process actually was a 12-month process to get through these phases. And we accomplished that. Actually, AMPS, the Association for Mississippi Peer Support, is established, has funding, and is doing some pretty cool things. So I know the process works. So I appreciate you sort of bearing with me in terms of this feels kind of ambiguous or nebulous, like where are we going? He's just asking questions and we're just kind of reporting out. Well, that's where we are in this process. You're generating insights because after all, we want this to be family driven, and that's who you are. So your input is going to be what shapes this. All right, so are you ready to give your input? Ooh, I'm not sure if is that on? Is it on? Nope. That's okay.
Okay, that's been, ooh, okay. So because our answer to the first question was further the efforts to advocate for people with disabilities, the answer to this question would be that the goal that would be accomplished is that people with disabilities would live more independently because we provide assistive technology services, and I know that we do advocacy in policy and other issues that are kind of hotbed issues right now within the government.
Okay, so just want to make sure I capture that right. Living more independently due to technology and policy changes?
That sounds good.
Okay, that sounds good. All right. Anything else that you want to add to that, or?
No, that was it.
Okay, great. Can you hand the mic to the next table, please?
Yes, sir.
Did you call me sir?
Yes, I did.
Wow, that like makes me feel all official. I've been called a lot of things, but. All right, next table. Here we go.
Okay. We said building capacity statewide, basically to enable local FROs to be able to unite and find out about services or ideas that they could go back and incorporate in their own areas. Maybe being, like, we're from a rural area, so a lot of times you don't have a lot of resources, so you go out and, like, when we come here every year, we learn something new or about a program or something that we might not have known about if we hadn't come. So that would be similar with the with this, to that way you're all uniting to help each other out.
Okay, that's definitely a very important outcome of this process potentially. Any others? Just that one. I gave you people 10 minutes and you're only giving me one item? All right, come on, lighten up. All right, what do you got?
One of the things I think is if we make ourselves more effective, we also can make systemic changes in our systems, agencies and departments of Florida.
Okay. And that certainly has a whole possibility of being interpreted and defined, so good. Sticking with the one item trend. This table's not going to disappoint.
To create a stronger voice, which will then advocate for policy change, look for funding strategies to post on a website and share those funding opportunities that maybe your organization doesn't meet that need or qualify. There's lots of different grants out there that not everyone's going to be able to apply for. So the website would be to share funding opportunities, trainings that your agency or organization is offering, employment opportunities, and broaden the collaboration to learn about other family-run organizations and what they do.
Okay.
Okay, we're not that thought out, but of course, impact change, improve quality of life.
What was the first one? Impact?
Change,
Okay. Improve quality of life, you said?
funding legislative impact, policy change, power in numbers.
Okay, I didn't catch those last ones. Can you repeat those?
And policy change.
We are laughing because they stole all our ideas.
Mm.
But we have a few.
Actually, I listened to yours and I walked over and told them to say that.
Shame on you. So we think we can accomplish developing, and Kathy was talking about having a common voice, not only that we will understand each other, but when we advocate for the needs of our families, we'll have a voice that will sound cohesive to people changing policy and approving things for our constituents. Also, a cohesive system of support. So supports are balanced and effective, that we can show progress. And definitely this will help to gain some political influence and having a presence as an issue in our community. Anything else, ladies?
Well, you've done it good.
Thank you. Here you are.
Pretty much all that's already up there. We had mentioned research funding as well.
Okay.
All right, since the rest of my table has abandoned me, I'll speak for myself. I came
This
up
better be
with
good.
To use each other's resources and share information that each of us have acquired.
Great. Okay, so a good list there. And again, I'm sure that if we continued to spend time on it, we could continue to generate more and more ideas. Part of the problem with this process is that sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? There might be someone who's an organizational capacity building consultant or someone who is an executive director of a national organization that knows all sorts of best practices and things like that. But for most of us, this kind of thinking does not come so quickly and easily, right? And so, again, what we want to do is stress that this is just a start, and hopefully the process will result in even more information and ideas being generated. So the next question, and there's probably like maybe 3 or 4 more questions total. What could the key values and guiding principles of this collaborative be? What is important to you in terms of what's going to guide you? Is it obviously family run? That's the key principle. Well, what else? Let's say you were, I'll give you an example. If you were all faith-based organizations trying to develop a faith-based coalition or consortium, you'd say that one of our guiding principles is that we are faith-based and our faith permeates what we do. That's an example of a guiding principle. Another example of a guiding principle might be, let's see, something that you would value at an organizational level, a good one that I've seen. You know, who you're focusing on. Let's say you have a special focus on transition age youth. Say that's going to guide what we do. Or we really value honesty. That's one of our, you know, you walk into an organization and you see on the wall our values and they have 10 things listed or whatever. What are those things? What's important to you? honesty, communication, those are sort of our guiding values and what we hold each other accountable to. Collaborative advocacy is something I've seen. So take some time to just, again, brainstorm. And this one you should definitely have at least 5, not just 1. I need some raw material. Come on. And if you want to group up together, feel free to do that. If it will help you think more ideas. We about ready to report out? You guys ready? I think we're going to start over here. You look like you're the one who's ready to report. Who wants the mic? Ink a bottle of ink. The cork fell out and you stink. Oh, yeah, that was a good one, wasn't it? Here you go.
We actually forgot about the question. We were talking about.
You don't have a list of values?
We did do the values.
Okay, good. That's what I want. All right. That's good. Okay. All right, let's listen up. We have the first set of values. See if yours match up with what they said. All right, what do you got?
Read what off?
Yeah, networking.
I'm waiting.
I'm sorry, I'm not really sure what they want to say.
I thought you had a list of values.
Okay. Okay. Key values and guiding principles, right? Family-run organizations, focus on special needs, collaborative advocacy, support and education.
Okay, great. Thanks. Can you walk the mic over here? I told this group that they get to go first so that their ideas aren't stolen. All right, what do you got?
We did intense brainstorming.
It looked, I could feel it from here.
So Leah and Kim, they were talking about the value of being ethical. And by that, they mean being credible, honest as an organization. And Kim said an organization will not go too far without that, having an honest and ethical approach.
Okay.
Second is a common goal. And by this, we talk about finding consensus and not necessarily about everyone agreeing, but agreeing to disagree. So the final product that is presented represents everyone because everyone was heard in the process. Having clear priorities and stick to the priorities, as something Kathy also mentioned, is very important. And
stick to priorities?
Yes. Work on it. So at the end of the year, it makes sense what you did with what you plan to do.
Tell me to work on it. All right.
Exactly. And Luan and Cindy, they mentioned about, I think what is probably the most important, to keep your passion, be committed to this organization and its values.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Without being redundant, the other ones that we would have would be enhancing quality of life, effect change, to be tolerant and respectful of all, and collaborate, communicate.
One second, you're a little bit soft there. Be tolerant and respectful of all.
Yes.
And what was the second one?
Enhance quality of life. No, you got that one.
There's something about change in there.
Effect change.
Effect change. That's what I missed. Okay.
Family-oriented and focused. I think you already have that one. And that would be it, other than supporting each other.
Well, that's a big one, supporting each other. You know, I see that as you probably obviously do yourselves. When I've interacted with boards of directors of family-run organizations, just how unique that culture is, because you have to recognize these are people with not just their job and their sort of normal ups and downs. They have some very unique challenges in their lives and their families, and that can impact a board meeting. I'm sure it's probably even happened today in this meeting. Like, oh, I got a call. I got to go talk to the doctor. I got a so-and-so call. I mean, it doesn't stop, right? And so family organizations have that very unique culture of supporting each other with understanding and tolerance and just other forms of empowerment. So that's good. This group.
Be strength-based, find common ground, respect for diversity. I'm trying to read my handwriting. Family-driven, youth-guided, support for all families, and we were trying to say here, regardless of socioeconomic status, ethnicity, culture, or identity. And use person first language.
Okay, so what was that list again? Socioeconomic status.
Ethnicity, culture,
Come on,
and
fingers.
identity.
And identity?
Yes.
Okay. So that was tied to the support for all families.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. And then what was next?
Use person first language.
Use. That was my Italian coming out. Use. Use person. Someone got that. I am like 116% Italian. So, and I grew up with 5 sisters, and yeah, there are a lot of odd things. So, and I get punchy after lunch, in case you haven't noticed. All right. Use person-centered language. But that's what keeps us awake and plowing through the grind. That's what this is. Do you feel it? Do you feel your brains being just kind of, this is tough work, okay? Don't kid yourselves. This is tough work. You don't get to just come to a summit today and talk about all this stuff and it goes up into kind of the fairyland of collaboration and something good will come of it. You will have to do something with this stuff. It's a good kind of work. It's hard, it's grueling, isn't it? I'm getting looks like you're crazy. All right. Yes, I am. Okay, what do you got?
One is conflict is more than accepted. It's a key ingredient for success. People need to be trained on this and to become more comfortable with it. Number 2, respect each other's styles of communication. We all don't communicate the same. That's what makes us great. 3.
Hang on.
I can't read my own license.
What about conflict trained as to how to...
People need to be trained on how to, what is it? Conflict is more than accepted. It's a key ingredient for success. What makes us, you come out with a better product when you learn to do that, and we need training to do that. Most groups, including all of the groups, really need it. We also need to be taught how to do that in our own families as well.
Okay, and what was the second one then?
Second one is respect each other's styles of communication. We all do it differently. One's not better than the other. And probably you need to use different styles in different venues.
All right, and the next one.
And it's, we need to not only hear, but to actually listen. And to listen, you need to listen with your heart and mind, and therefore you're much able to accept what somebody else is saying to you.
Okay.
Number 4, it's the whole family. It's not just the person with the disability. It affects the entire family.
Okay.
Number 5, ask, what am I willing to do differently?
Okay. Thank you. Good.
I think a lot of ours were covered already, but I'm just going to read them in case, because since we keep scrolling up.
Sure.
The first one was building capacity statewide. Oh, no, sorry, that was from the last one we did. Collaboration, that's the big thing. The guiding principle should be the collaboration, I know,
Okay,
right?
can you start over
Okay.
and not mislead me?
Okay.
Okay.
So collaboration, and then, and this one, I think we've just worded it differently, emotionally safe environment. So, you know, people, sometimes they need to be able, I mean, I know this might not be during a policy meeting or something, you know, be able to vent sometimes, because this is a very emotional issue you're dealing with when you're dealing with family members and disabilities. So it's safe. You don't have to feel judged because you might get overwhelmed and impassioned.
I've seen along those lines things like a comfort agreement
Yeah.
that everyone subscribes to and says, yes, I will commit to living by these rules of this comfort agreement to create this a safe environment. And I know, you know, that the phrase safe space has kind of taken a beating in the media from certain perspectives, and especially like on college campuses and talking about college students. But I think especially among family-run organizations, the concept of safe environment has a much deeper meaning and is something that needs to be engineered consciously so that all members of the organization feel like they can share their voice the way they are able, and that's really important.
Right.
So, continue, thanks.
Okay, focusing on advocacy, whether it's teaching self-advocacy, helping families learn to advocate for their loved ones, working as a group to advocate for the whole cause, whether it's statewide, advocating for the whole family-run organizational group, or individual locally run groups, learning how to advocate. I think that's a big principle that we should focus on. Embracing differences to find commonality. Because everybody, you know, we have different points of view about things sometimes, but we can always learn from each other, even though we might look at things a little differently.
Interesting one there, because that's where we started today.
And then compassion.
And look where we've got.
And compassion.
Compassion. Good. Good list.
Okay, so we came out with 2 of them. The first one is engaging as many stakeholders as possible.
Okay.
And the second one was valuing input into our organization by having an opportunity for public comment during meetings.
Good. All right, what a great list. And again, it's a start, and we will hand this off to a planning team. I know that's just going to start sounding redundant. Yes, I'm going to keep repeating it because I'm trying to brainwash you as you sit here in your post-lunch semi-coma. It's my opportunity to put you into a kind of train your mind as to what are we going to do? Launch a planning committee. Thank you. Something along those lines. You might call it a steering committee. You could call it a lot of different things, but someone and something to do something with all this good stuff. All right, don't forget to look at the 8-page document. You know, there were not just what is being provided by your family-run organization, but more importantly, or in this conversation, what are you hoping that this collaborative can provide. Now, obviously, in some of the answers to previous questions, we've started to hear some of this stuff, so it might start to sound redundant because these questions are pretty related. I mean, they're very closely related. So redundancy at this stage is a good thing. Because you know what that means? It means consistency. That means, well, maybe that's where we should be putting our focus if this keeps popping up again and again and again. So this document has some good ideas in it. And so the question is, at your table, can you envision, let's just pretend you have a budget and you have staff and you can do stuff. What stuff are you going to do? What programs and services are you going to do through this collaborative? Not your individual organization. What is this collaborative going to do? All right, it's time. You guys ready this time?
I'm ready this time.
I'm
ready this time.
So no side, you didn't get sidetracked, huh? All right, we have the first group is going to tell us some things that they think would be great services, resources, etc. What do you got?
We would like to support
Support.
those who would like to attend advanced leadership training and bring their knowledge back to the collaborative group. Support those who would like to attend advanced leadership training.
And then do what with it?
And share that knowledge with back to the group.
Good, that's a good one. Passing the mic, here we go. What's the next group got?
So first, we talk about grant opportunity. Well, first we imagine that we have $5 million. So what are we going to do with that? We will offer grant opportunities for local FROs and to ensure that they can progress with their individual goals. Mm-hmm. Second is training and education in different platforms like webinars, workshops, to make it really accessible for the group members. And some of the areas that we will cover are advocacy. Also, Kathy mentioned how to be sustainable, so that those groups are strong financially as well. And the third is a marketing campaign to make sure we promote awareness of that common voice that we mentioned before. So there's a common message, and it's shared with the society, with the rest of the people. Yeah.
You like holding that microphone, don't you?
I'm sorry?
You like holding the microphone, don't you? I can tell. You're a natural. That's great. All right, next group.
Develop a resource network.
Develop a resource center.
Network. A funding avenue. And protocols such as grant writing.
Protocols such as grant writing. Are you suggesting like grant writing assistance? Okay. Good. Next group.
Okay. Develop a database for resources and funding opportunities. Facilitate board development training.
Okay.
Training on family leadership.
Yep.
Collaborative grant writing.
Ooh, that's a good phrase.
A resource to legislative/platform. Develop public policy committee. And develop a position paper. Position papers in general.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks.
Okay, so we said advocate for policy, procedure, process changes in the state agencies and at the legislative level. A symposium where families can come and speak with, policymakers and those that are in charge of making decisions. And the symposium would be at multiple levels, local, regional, and state. And then we had a third one that we couldn't quite figure out what to call it. But it seems that oftentimes multiple agencies or multiple organizations are using funding to do the same thing, but they're not coming together to collaborate on how those funds maybe would be best spent, or how can you kind of stretch your dollar, so to speak.
Good. That one's really kind of interesting as well, because you get into this question of, well, we're both doing the same thing, who's going to stop doing it? So, yeah, you know what, that could be kind of dicey. So the question becomes, well, is there something in addition that can be done? Or rather than, if we're both doing the same thing for everyone, can one of us take a certain age group and really specialize there, and the other one on the other side of the age group? So there are different ways to explore. I think problem solving will be necessary to help FROs, family-run organizations, for those of you who don't like the acronyms, to help them avoid competing. Okay, good. Was there another one, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
just wanted to add on to the symposium one, that families also come to the table because they're also their own individual FROs, that they come together with their issues and their solutions, and to gather more information and knowledge from the group to bring more effective organizations' policies together.
Great.
You're doing a good job.
Thank you. Next group.
Well, we have so many new things to offer.
All right, bring it on.
One of them was to establish and maintain a resource list. Can't read that word, but that would be updated regularly with live links and not dead ones. And what we've found is there's a lot of different organizations or entities that have resource lists, but there's not resource lists. But there's not a common one that's kind of a one-stop go-to to see everything that's available in the area or the state. One of the suggestions was having a blog to include some of the updates and different things going on, training programs, that a variety of platforms like they talked about, in person or webinars, both formal and informal. Notification of available funding, that would be something I guess that could be included in the blog as well. And then shared resources as far as web developing, grant writing,
Hang on.
those things.
Are you kind of giving examples of what's inside this resource list, or are these other ideas that you were wanting me to type, like when you started rattling them off? There are other, okay, so can you go back to the start and just go just a little slower? Because you left me at, can we get a resource list that is a go-to resource that's all encompassing, and then you kind of.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so just, was that off the top of your head, or is that written down?
Well, it's written down, and then I think I added to it a little bit. That would, what I wrote down was establish and maintain a resource list.
No, I've got that part, but what after that point, what were the other things?
Oh, okay. Blog was one suggestion.
Okay.
Training programs, in-person webinars, both formal and informal, like we might have a monthly online gathering of some key folks or people that wanted to be involved. Regionally and statewide. Be able to notify of available funding, get that out there. There's so that people are aware of what's grants are available and those kind of things. And then sharing resources. Some of the things that we talked about was web development, grant writing.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Okay, so some of ours might also be similar, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So we said an awareness that is otherwise unknown for other individuals in society, and create a growing network.
Wait. Can you clarify what that means? An awareness that is otherwise unknown for individuals in society, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Well, that means that we want to kind of, how do I say it?
Are you, like creating, you want people to know about this? Help with their awareness?
Yeah.
Okay, so creating a strong brand, if you will, like that?
Yes, that would work.
Okay.
Because it's more a thought of kind of getting the word out so that if people wanted to productively help us, they could.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And then the other one I had was, hold on one second, because now I got to read my notes. Create a growing network for the communities to tap into a way to achieve a greater outcome in their goals.
Good. Got another one?
No, that was it.
All right. Awesome. Good job. All right. So thank you for that list. And I know it feels like we've been doing this for hours and hours, but we've only been at this for about an hour and 4 minutes. So here we have, I'm not sure we're ready to tackle this question about what are some possible structures. I think that's a much heavier question. But this is on the horizon. It's to say, once we think through this stuff, what do we be? Are we a consortium, a steering committee, a nonprofit that operates as a traditional service nonprofit? Are we, I guess, again, just different structures. Obviously, I mean, I would anticipate you'd want to try and have this be incorporated, so you'd have some kind of status. Potentially, if you're a nonprofit, pursue that 501c3 so that you can apply for grants and receive grant funding, possibly be a fiduciary agent for other FROs that might need, they don't have their 501c3, but they might want to use this organization to be the steward of their grant or something like that. You know, do you have a big board or a small board? Is the board representative of the entire state geographically? Are there some kind of rules for making sure that certain representatives or voices are represented on the board itself? I mean, so what this structure kind of looks like, this will be a key item to brainstorm, but that's a very complex one that I don't think we have time and maybe not the brain juice to tackle right at this moment. Plus, I want to talk about these questions because we have 12 minutes to figure out who wants to be part of a planning committee to work with this information. And I'll talk through the job description in just a moment. How will the planning committee communicate, and who's going to lead and facilitate this planning committee? So here's the job description. Again, this is hard work. There will be monthly communication and probably a little bit of homework. Actually, let me do this. Let me make this one bigger. How's that? Okay. Monthly communication and homework, participation in conference calls, so you must have a reliable computer and phone. Roughly 2 to 5 hours of work per month. We're talking kind of over the next 12 months. And I'm basing this on, again, experience of doing that phased framework that I showed you earlier over 12 months. Some averages. Possible additional subcommittee work as tasks are defined, maybe an extra 2 to 4 hours of work if you're on a committee or doing a specific point of research or something. You must share your opinions. I put the word must there because this planning committee is dead if nobody shares their insights and opinions. You have to be willing to go there. So share your opinions and insights, be willing to discuss and possibly compromise in order to find and achieve consensus. Consensus is important in this planning committee. And by the way, this planning committee will have to reach out to the broader statewide voice, people who, again, who are not here today, and be able to send out updates and say, here's what we came up with a possible mission statement, or these 3 options. We're going to send this out to a email list of 500 people. Send in your comments, and yeah, one of our tasks over the next few months will be to synthesize all those comments and come up with what we think in a final recommendation. Be willing to be associated with this planning effort. I've heard several comments about, gosh, I don't want to risk my funding being taken away. Well, if that is a real concern for you, then you may not be a good planning committee person, because if by chance this is perceived as a threat by any funding sources, which I think this could be done without doing that, but if that's really important to you, you might want to just, give it a second thought. I think this effort can be done in a way that energizes, for example, the state and the various agencies, rather than comes across as a threat. I think they should be glad to see this taking shape. But be willing to participate in a face-to-face full-day work session somewhere along the timeline. Hopefully we could find a source of funding to help defray expenses, but probably on a Saturday that people in this group would come together to have some real face-to-face conversation and discussion to kind of advance things that have been discussed over the phone. Be able to hear comments and channel passion into constructive response. That's a nice way of saying be willing to, have thick skin, hear stuff honestly from people and not take it personally, and help generate the answer. This planning approach, by the way, is a really good training opportunity for those people who want to become better at planning and advocating, because this process will force you to advocate for your opinions and ideas, but inside the safe environment of like-minded people in a planning process. And that you're willing to make a 12-month commitment to the process. So I know that all of that together like that can sound daunting, but I assure you that it's very feasible. It's not as scary as that sounds. I wanted to make sure you knew the reality of this commitment before you just kind of sign it. Because the last thing we want is, a dozen people say, yeah, pick me, I'll do this. And then, 2 months later, none of them are responding. Well, I didn't know I had to do some work or this or that. And it's like, oh, okay. So now you know. So the question becomes, who would be interested in being part of this? And it might not be something that we have to, raise hands, but I guess what I would say is I'll set up a sort of a sign-up sheet. And if you're interested, you can come up afterwards and put your name and contact information on here, and I will make sure that Lori gets that and is able to kind of work with that. Any questions about that job description? And I am here the whole conference, by the way. So if you see me and want to talk about any of this stuff, feel free to flag me down, and we just won't be on camera. But other than that, it'd be a fun conversation. How will this planning committee communicate? What's your best form of communication? Phone call? Email? Email? Does email, for many different reasons, does email not work for people? Is email tough for some people? No? Okay. So it looks like, are you familiar with things like, obviously, webinars, GoToMeeting, that kind of stuff? Maybe even a text list, so that if something needed to go out to everybody, you could do that pretty quickly. Someone had a hand up here? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think email is probably best suited for sharing documents and maybe sharing agendas, doing some, setting up times and things like that, sending out a doodle poll link. But I agree with you. I would suggest that you try not to do discussion via email, although sometimes that occurs when someone says, well, here's our draft document, read it and send your feedback via email. That's different. But a back and forth, that gets really, really kind of long and not effective. And last question really is who can you have that can lead or facilitate this planning committee? Me? I could. I'd be honored. That would be for you guys to decide.
Will you be providing technical assistance through this process?
That's a good question. I don't know if I can answer that right at the moment. Yeah, it could be Fredla. Yeah, could be Fredla, could be the National Federation. Yeah, I don't know if the National Federation does something like this or Fredla. So I think you could have options, and you could also say, well, among the people of the planning committee, what about identifying an officer, a president, a chairperson, Yeah. Yeah, question. I guess I don't understand your question. Are you saying that if you work for a state agency, are you eligible for this?
That's my question. If it will be better if it's only FRLs or members, or if it's an agency or private individuals part of it. It will be a good contribution. I don't know how to explain it, but what will be the most qualified committee member? If it's preferred to have someone who is already leading an organization versus someone who works for an agency.
Okay, so good question. The question being, what makes a person a good person to be on this planning committee? Are there eligibility requirements? Do they have to be a family member? What if they work for an agency rather than for a family-run organization, but they're still a family member, but just not working for an FRO? I mean, you guys could kind of talk about that. We could, you could brainstorm that. That's a good question. I personally have always been of the opinion that You know, the more diverse perspectives you can have, the better, sort of more well thought out your solution will be. But that ultimately you do want to strive to have at least the 51% family-run threshold achieved, even on this planning committee, even though it's not an official board, because you want to be able to say that not only did we create a centralized sort of family-run organization entity, whatever that is, it was done in a family-driven way. So that's the key, in my opinion. Yeah, you what? Okay.
This group, this consortium is obviously a great idea, but I'm curious because I don't know how this fits in with some folks were talking about the CANS group. Are we duplicating an effort here? No. Or no. Is it two different? Okay. So what exactly is the CANS piece?
The CAN group is an arm of CAFE where we are interested, concerned with legislative issues. So that network is created to network amongst all of those of us who have joined, who will then go to our representatives, our senators, or whatever, and solicit their support for something that we feel very strongly for that affects our families.
Is that what's other than just the cafe? Is it other organizations?
Right now, CAN is an arm of CAFE, but anyone who is an advocate in whatever respect, whether as an employee or someone who's involved in another organization, all voices are welcome, because the more we are, the greater our voice.
But I thought that the CAN was really, which I was excited about because I couldn't find it here in Florida, a change agent organization.
Which is basically change agent, meaning a combination of our voices to act cohesively together in order to effect changes, legislatively, whether it's systemically, if we need to get in touch with APD and something needs to be changed there, something like that. Yeah.
If there is the most, so I think what we're talking about right here, that's the confusion. So I think CAN has been so silent for so long, it really hasn't done what we had intended it to really do. So almost it's a rebirth of what it started out to do.
Isn't the planning committee more concerned about planning for CAFE as a whole as opposed to CAN?
No, this group today is talking about a statewide effort to form a unified voice of family-run organizations. Now, if CAN has either attempted that or made progress along those lines, for sure it would be smart to look and see what they've done. And maybe that's gone as far as it could go where it is. And you could, in this planning committee would say, how do we take that and build upon it? Let's just, we don't have to throw stuff out. So yeah, there's a lot more context. I mean, you can imagine how, I guess, just how, what we tried to do today, and we have made really great progress finding at least your consensus to pursue this and some great input and understanding the framework and approach. But you can imagine how you could spend an entire weekend, the 3 days that we did with Fredla, to say, oh my goodness, all of these considerations, a SWOT assessment, a context assessment, the needs, everything, I mean, and yes, just truly a grueling process. You don't want to do it in a weekend. You want to do it over several months so you're not burned out. Here and then there. Yeah.
So that leads me to who will facilitate, and because Lori has the statewide family network grant, you would think that the natural leader on that to get it started and to kick it off and pull that together would be,
Well, they have a good collaboration now with the only organization I've seen anybody
Right. That's again, a kind of a good summary of some of our earlier agreement, that exact point. So no, I'm glad you, because we have to remember that. So thank you. Sir, you had your hand up. Or we hang the hangers.
Yeah. The questions were basically what was fostered, what ties or building bridges have gone so we can be on the same accord.
Sure. Good comment. And I think again it's we have what I've heard today was so much agreement and consensus about those points that's how we got to where we're at, and that is some kind of planning effort that, as part of the planning effort, is going to be assess what else is going on, what exists, what do we want to build on, what do we want to improve upon, what do we want to stop doing because it was not effective, or for whatever reason, change direction. I mean, that's what this planning committee will be tasked to do. So, and I don't think you necessarily need to decide who will lead or facilitate at this exact moment. But we have some good candidates, and there could be others as well. So I think we're at the point where we're done. Then we say, what do we do? What's the exact next step? How about if I'll type those up here? John will prepare notes. John will send them to Lori. Lori will send them out. And in addition to this, let's talk about volunteers to be on the planning committee, the PC. Those who signed up will be contacted, and a first conference call will be scheduled. In the meantime, John will volunteer to create a work plan and phases to help guide PC, and the PC can refine these. So at the very least, from this meeting, you can expect to have something that looks kind of like this. This was the phase 1 work plan. I'll zoom out to show you what it looks like. It's a real simple Word document. It's got come on, pointer. This column is the task, the due date, the people involved. And then we have August, September, October, November, December. Just a 6-month view for the first phase. And then if you look inside these tasks, these are exactly what we were talking about. Formalize the planning committee's communication strategy, and make sure you can also touch people outside this room. Discussion about mission and vision, core values and philosophy. Get that stuff nailed down, articulate the draft, finalize it, get to a point where you can have a planning committee meeting in person and begin to interface with some state leaders to say, here's what we've decided is important, and we have bounced this around. We've gotten a lot of feedback. We've crystallized some really key things, and it's time to unveil it to key state partners. In fact, you may even include some of them as stakeholders along the way. Then you're going to work on your program and service concepts and finalize that. ultimately, before you begin phase 2, you'll kind of have the beginning of a business plan for what this entity will be, whatever it's going to be. So I can tailor this document. I can tailor this document if you like this kind of thing as well, and plug information in based on what I heard today, and give you guys some tools to help guide your effort. So if you decide that, Crystal is on this committee and she's kind of been elected as the leader, Crystal can use these documents to help guide the meetings. So anyway, any questions about where this goes from here? I know it's a big question mark out there, but that's okay. We are in discovery mode right now still, but you have a process and you have consensus to pursue it, and those are our two goals today. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, oh, back here. Yes, Jeremy.
So during the training, I didn't hear you talk about mascots at all.
You are right. I did not mention mascots. Boom, Jeremy's back. All right, Jeremy, I'm going to make you sing again. All right. Yes, Gil. Oh. What? Oh. Any other comments or questions? Yes. Right. Well said. Well said. This is yours to do. So, thank you. I appreciate your time, and I know that was. Is the camera still going? All right. I know there was a lot of hard work today, and I was asked to remind you about the envelope stuffing. So that's manual labor, not mental labor. So that should be good.